Hello, today, as I mentioned in my last video, today I'm going to cover women that did the actual piloting of airplanes in the very early part of the 20th century. Hope you enjoy. Please hit subscribe and have a good day. Amelia Earhart has made the news lately because she infamously had disappeared many years ago in the Pacific Ocean, and they have just found her plane. Now, she was born Amelia Mary Earhart, July 24th, 1897, in Kansas. She disappeared July 22nd, 1937, and she was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. She was trying to make a much longer trip, and that is when she disappeared. There was a lot of talk about she might have been attacked by the Japanese or anything, but they did find her airplane, and she had apparently survived. She had crashed, but she and her navigator did survive. There's signs that she made it onto a local island, and but she was very famous. And I want to mention that Charles Lindbergh had been the first man to cross the Atlantic, and the resemblance that they both carried to each other is astonishing. The next person I'm going to speak about is Blanche Scott. She was an aviator and said to be the first professional pilot that was a woman. In 1911, she met Glenn Curtiss and Jerome Falcioni, who agreed to provide her with flying lessons in Hammondford, New York. In 1911, the first flying school in America was formed, and he taught her how to operate an airplane, where she subsequently became the first female pilot. During this time, Scott resided in the town in the home of Curtiss and his family, where Scott received her flying lessons. She was the only woman to receive such instruction directly from Curtiss, and he had put a timber on the throttle of her airplane so that she would not be able to fly when she was taxiing around. But on September 6th, through fate, either a gust of wind or the timber moved, she took flight and went 40 feet, and she was considered the first legally licensed person to fly that was a female. Evelyn Bobby Trout. She was born January 7th, 1906, passed on Jan 24th, 2003. She was an early aviator and endurance flying record holder. She began her aviation career at 16, however, her first solo flight and certificate was not issued until April 30th, 1928. In the spring of that year, her mother bought her an International K-6 biplane, and she received her pilot's identification from the United States Department of Commerce on September 1st, 1928. She was the second woman to break the non-refueling endurance record of women when she flew just 12 hours straight from California in 1929. It had been previously held by Viola Gentry and was the first record where the Federal Aviation Rules of Endurance had been revised, and she went on to participate in the Women's Air Derby in 1929, where they dubbed her the Powder Puff Derby champion. She was recognized in part in 2001 for being the first Women's Air Derby, and she got her nickname when she opened her hairstyle in 1928. Helen Ritchie was an amazing pilot. She became famous in December 1933 when she partnered with another female pilot named Frances Mercedes to set an endurance record by staying airborne for nearly 10 days over Miami, Florida with mid-air fueling. Their aircraft was a Curtiss Thrush named Outdoor Girl after its sponsor, a cosmetic brand. In 1934, she won the premier air race at the first National Air Meet for women in Dayton, Ohio. She also, in that year, Central Airlines, a Greensburg, Pennsylvania-based carrier that eventually became part of the United States Airlines, hired her as a pilot. She made her first regular civil flight with them on December 31st, taking a Ford tractor to the Washington to Delaware route. The airline had restrictions placed upon her when she could fly, limiting her to weather with the airlines. In May 1936, she started flying a light plane and set an international altitude record for an aircraft weighing under 200 kilograms. She reached 18,448 feet during a flight from Congressional Airport to Endless Caverns Airport in Newmarket, Virginia. She left Central Airlines and continued to perform at the air shows where she teamed up with Amelia Earhart. After a year of ferrying British airplanes, she resigned for her air transport position in March of 1943, and in September of 43, she and professional golfer Helen Duttweiler were awarded their Army Air Force wings at Avenger Field. In 1944, she became a member of the Women's Air Force Service Pilots, and at that time, she became the first female commercial air pilot. She also was the first woman sworn into pilot mail. Marjorie Stinson was born July 5th, 1895, and passed on the 15th of April, 1975. She was an aviator, airline pilot, pilot instructor, and a stunt pilot. She was a very early person from the early 1900s. She trained at the Wright Flying School, earned her license in 1914, and became the 9th woman in the United States to do so. She was an expedition pilot, and that later was the first female airline pilot in the United States, flying from Sequim to San Antonio carrying the mail in 1915. Along with her sister Catherine, she taught at the Stinson School of Flying, established by her mother. Once it closed, she returned to expedition flying and worked at the Department of the Navy, retiring in 1945. I want to thank you for watching, and please hit subscribe if you enjoyed the video.